for the sight.
Jazz at the Philharmonic. That was big. Another very important thing to him was joining, being asked to join that organization, working for Norman Granz. And this was one of the first, I think it was probably one of the first white men that he really came to trust and believe in.
Unlike any other impresario of the time, remember too, the Jazz of the Philharmonic was the beginning of the jazz concert tours. There never had been anything like that. There may have been the occasional jazz concert like the one in '38 at Carnegie, but nobody had ever taken the same group of great artists and toured them all over the United States. So in that sense, we were first.
The real show was to be a constant battle between Lester Young and Coleman Hawkins, because the president just got out of the Army, and Coleman Hawkins had such a big reputation already, and so it was like a heavyweight prize fight every night to go hear these two guys battle all the time. And I was the third one. Like Lester was playing, I would play, and I was just separating the two. I was kind of like the referee.
Yes, I suppose Buck could use the word referee, but I don't think that people really understood the function of Jazz of the Philharmonic behind the stage, not for the public. You didn't have to have Jazz of the Philharmonic to feel the competitiveness, the competition, I should say, between great musicians. All you had to do was go to a jam session that was normally limited to musicians and their friends in after-hours places. And any great artist has an ego and has a pride in what he does. And so, of course, you played competitively. But in the case of Hawk and Lester, their styles were so completely different, and their musical approaches were so different, that the best that I hoped for was that each might inspire the other.
Some of the funny things, like a drummer who was playing behind him, and he says, not so many bombs, baby. Just give me some rat-a-tay, rat-a-tay, rat-a-tay. You know, he could describe something, and when he describes it, it looks just like that, you know.
He was always, say, if you like, relaxed in his playing. I remember Hawk telling me once that he said, no matter how I could ever be relaxed at my best, I'll never be as relaxed as Lester. Well, that was Lester's, but Lester was relaxed about everything, you see. I mean, when we went to eat, he'd eat sometimes in strange ways, strange combinations.
Well, he never would eat nothing. He liked Chinese food, but he'd order up a lot of Chinese food. He'd take a little taste of that, little taste of that, little taste of that, little taste of that, and that was it, and they'd leave it. I mean, it was just like, he could have fed the whole army on the food he left, you know.
He used to drink quite a bit. He drank maybe a fifth a day or something like that.
And frequently I used to go mix his morning drink for him, which was a bottle of Sauterne and a big punch bowl and a quart of gin. And that's the way he would start the day. Didn't seem to affect him, but I couldn't handle it with him.
On February 21st, 1951, Lester led his own small group at a concert at Carnegie Hall. He followed that up with an appearance at Birdland and at the first Newport Jazz Festival.
His music remained supreme, and when we got him back with Basie, you know, he was better than ever. He was reunited with the rhythm section, and they had all sorts of marvelous musicians there at that time.
During the 50s, Lester played as much as his health would allow. He gigged with Basie on special occasions. He continued touring with Jazz at the Phil. He also led his own small group. His drummer was Connie Kay.
Started playing with Lester. I couldn't understand a thing he was saying, you know. I'd have to ask the other guys in the band, say, what did he say? What, you know. And, you know, he'd call a tune like he'd say, like there's a tune called She's Funny That Way, you know, instead of saying she's funny, he'd tell the piano player, she's funky that way, you know, or something. He was unique, very unique man. And he wasn't a dummy, he's very intelligent, you know. People looked at him and said, gee, that cat's thing. But Lester wasn't dumb, man. He was a very smart man. And you know, now that I've gotten older and I look back at it, man, I gained a lot of knowledge from that man.
All great comedic talent, and Prez really was a great humor. It's timing, too. He used to say things just right. But I remember once, I think it was in Montreal, and one of the joys that the guys had, because Prez could really take a ribbing, and the guys used to play to him, kind of. And one of the jokes that they would do, Oscar Peterson and his trio with Buddy Rich, you know, with Ray Brown and Herb Ellis, they would play the ballad medley. And that year, Prez was playing I Didn't Know What Time It Was. Incidentally, he never played any tunes that he did not know all the lyrics to. It's another very interesting thought. I was not raised that way. I was raised to play tunes by the harmonic structure, knew most of the melody and everything. Prez wouldn't unless he knew the lyrics. Wanted to get inside the song, kind of. But anyway, he was playing on that tour. His ballad, in the ballad medley with all the other guys, was I Didn't Know What Time It Was. And of course, it's a very beautiful song. And you can develop it to a high, in other words, where there are maybe 4 chord changes, you can put 8. You can keep it moving and revolving. Well, that's how Oscar used to put the needle into Prez. Prez would come out and they'd start. He'd lead Prez in fine, and then Oscar would go through these manifold different changes, moving here, there, and everywhere. And you could see Prez's eyes. Because Prez liked simple chords back there. And on this one concert in Montreal, he started, there was this long piano, like a 12-foot concert grand, probably used for choirs, with the top of it off. Stretched out there, and Oscar at the end of it, and Prez out here. And Prez started to back up to the piano, and he took the horn out of his mouth. He was looking in the piano at Oscar, and didn't know that a mic was right there in the end of the piano. And he looked at Oscar and he said, Lady Pete, he said, where are you, mother? He said, at. And the whole place came down. Was it the Forum? I think where they play hockey up a month. Oh, there must have been thousands of people. And it was like a waterfall. And afterwards, of course, and it was on the ballad medley, so it was right out in the clear. Lady Pete, where are you, mother? Look at that. I remember once we were just together walking in the street in some city out in the Northwest, maybe Seattle, somewhere in that area maybe. And we walked into a restaurant just off the street, and the man kind of looked at Prez and looked at me as if to say, I wonder what these two are up to, or what are they even doing together, and why do they want to eat in my restaurant? And Lester said, come on outside, Bob. And we went back outside. He said, let's find another place to eat. He said, so I said, why? I'm not going to be put off by him. You know, he doesn't like black people, or he doesn't like white people, or black people and white people together. So I'm not going to be put off by him. And when I was 18, I was ready to throw a punch. I thought there were things worthwhile throwing a punch about, and I would have thrown a punch at the man. And Prez said to me, no, it does not pay to do this. He said, I frankly do not want to eat where I'm not welcome. And at the moment, I didn't like it, but it taught me a lesson. He knew about those things. Now, someone could say to me, well, gee, Bob, that's just thumbnail sense. I don't know about that. Well, I could still see his face. And I remember we were in a Texas city, and we had come from the airport on a bus. And, of course, segregation was still the order of the day. And the black members of the troop were going to a black hotel, and then we were going, the white members, Buddy Rich, Krupa, myself, we were going to be taken to a white hotel. And we stopped by the black hotel. And, of course, all of the black members started getting off. And Prez had been sitting next to me, and he got up and started walking down the aisle, and he looked back at me, and he said, you know the story, Morning Glory.
It was in Texas where one of the most amazing racial confrontations occurred. Norman Granz versus the city of Houston.
Norman raised hell because we were booked on a flight with other people, and they roped us off because we were whites and blacks traveling together. But we were not to travel with the other people. We were roped off. On the plane, there were ropes for our seats. And I remember Norman raised hell about that because he said, I pay what those people pay. My people will get on a plane. They'll sit wherever the hell they want to, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, Norman sued the city of Houston over this concert and won. We played the first desegregated concert. But at any rate, in the course of that airport situation, Prez, with that wonderful pork pie hat of his, and that beautiful Fu Manchu look he used to get behind his doo-wah, doo-wah, and a little bit of grass, a little poke there. He was standing there with me, you know, and that's funny, and I can't get over it, too. I always remember his jackets with the padding, and, you know, where they don't sit right, and it looked like he had a hanger in his jacket, you know, it's kind of, and with that hat, and his shoulders up a little high, and he's just with the hands together. And I was just standing next to him, and here came these two Texas state troopers. And big foots, you know, 7-foot guys, real mean-looking fellas. And they looked at him as if to say, who the hell is he? And Prez, they stared at Prez, and Prez stared back at them. Finally, Prez hit me in the elbow, and he said, Socks, he said, tell him I'm a cowboy.
Continuing to forge new directions in music, Lester was confronted with a dilemma. There were so many Lester Young imitators that it was hard for the Prez himself to find work.
A lot of people don't know too much about Prez, you know. They should, but they don't. He never got the exposure he should have gotten. Only reason he got the exposure that he got is because cats started trying to copy him, you know. And they got all the exposure, plus the bread, too.
One of Lester's statements would be, Stan gets the money playing me. You understand that?
Without Lester, you wouldn't have Coltrane, you know, or Stan Getz and those kind of people, you know, so. That's where, you know, he wasn't just another saxophone player. He was a new voice in jazz and an inventor of another style.